Okay, this video is about rearranging formulae. Again, it's a follow-up to the first one. This time we're looking at formulae involving brackets, powers and square roots. So for this one I'm going to go straight into examples, because in the first video I explained what rearranging a formula is, and it's about changing the subject of a formula to get a letter on its own. So that's what I'm going to say about that, and get straight into an example. So remember to put my pen up. Here we go. So example 1, we're going to look at this formula. It's a completely made up formula. This doesn't mean anything. It's just to illustrate the method I'm going to show you. So we've got a bracket involved this time. We didn't on the previous video. We've got a equals x times a plus b in brackets. And for this question I want to change the subject so that b is the subject. So there is my subject inside that bracket. So how can I get b on its own? There's two ways you can do this. Okay, so I'm going to show you both. I'm going to do one on this side, one on this side. So we need to get rid of this x and this a somehow, so that we're left with b on its own, and the x and the a are going to be on this side of the equation, this side of the formula, and then we flip it around at the end. So the one way of doing this is to get rid of the x first. Okay, when you look at this right hand side of this formula, it says x multiplied by all of this bracket. Okay, so if x is being multiplied by all of this, to get rid of this x we simply need to divide all of it by x, and if we divide that side by x, we divide that side by x, of course. Now dividing this by x basically cancels these out. It turns it into 1. X divided by x is 1, and 1 times a plus b is of course just a plus b. So that cancels out the x, that gets rid of the x, because it's x multiplied by all of this. So if we divide by x, we cancel out the multiplying by x, as we've said previously when solving equations and the last video. So now all we need to do is get rid of the a. Well, that's the easier step. You subtract a from both sides, and a over x take away a is simply a over x take away a. Remember, we can't do anything with it. They're not numbers, they're letters, so you can't add them or subtract them unless they're the same letter, unless they're like terms. On left on this side we have b, and then we spin it around so b, our subject, comes first. So now if we knew the value of capital A and little a and x, we'd be able to work out b quite easily. Okay, so b is now the subject. That's one way of doing it. The other way is to get rid of the brackets first. So if we take our formula, a equals x bracket a plus b, and I quite often say this, if you see brackets, get rid of them, and sometimes it does make things a lot easier, but in this case that was quite easy to get rid of the x first. But you could multiply out the brackets first to get rid of those, to make it look easier. So x times a, xa, x times b, xb. Now we can get rid of xa, we can treat that as one term, so subtract xa, because that's plus xa on its own there. Remember, there's an invisible plus sign by there. So to get rid of xa, we subtract xa. Do it that side, do it that side. A take away xa is a take away xa equals plus xb, which is just xb. Now all we need to get rid of to leave b on its own as the subject is the x, and it's being multiplied by the b, so we divide by x, and remember to divide everything on that side by x as well, not just one of the terms, all the terms. Said that in the previous video as well. So that stays as it is. You can't go messing around with that. Not yet. Now this looks different to this, because it's actually the same. I'm going to show you in a minute. So we spin it around. We have a minus x a all over x. So you could leave it like that. B is the subject, and if you knew capital A, the value of it, the value of little a and the value of x, you could still work out b quite easily using that formula there. But it is the same as this if you think about it. We could split this up and just do it in brackets this could be broken up into a over x take away xa over x. Remember, when you subtract fractions, if the denominators are the same, you just subtract the tops. And the same with adding fractions. If the denominators are the same, they need to be. If they were different, you'd need to make them the same. But they are the same, not? So a over x take away xa over x is a minus xa over x. And what that gives us is a over x. That stays the same. Can't do anything like that. Well, this a x cancels out with that x, because x divided by x is 1, and 1a is of course a, and that is now the same as our answer over here. But like I just said just now, if you multiply the brackets out first, if you prefer that method, you can leave it like this, unless it's said in the question simplify your answer as far as possible. Okay, but this is acceptable for B being the subject, because it is, just as this is as acceptable. So whichever method you prefer, you can either get rid of the term outside the bracket first by dividing, and then sort out whatever you need to sort out that was inside the brackets, or you can expand the brackets, multiply them out, and then start doing your getting rid of terms by taking away and dividing and whatnot. Okay, that's example 1. Let's move on to example 2. And this time we're looking at something with a power, a squared. Now I did say at the last video, let's just write example 2, keep pressing the buttons on my pen and they get on my nerves, and I forgot to put my pen up again. Right, sorry about that, here we go. Example 2, remember the formula I mentioned, a equals pi r squared. That is the area of a circle, remember. Okay, how do I rearrange that to find r? Remember, so this is the area of a circle, and r represents radius. Okay, so this formula does mean something, not like the first example which I just made up. This is a proper formula. So you might want to rearrange that to have r equals, if you knew the area of a circle but you wanted to know its radius. But we've got this little squared, this power. How do we deal with that? Well, remember, if we want to make r the subject, we want to get it on its own. So we've got to get rid of pi first, and that's being multiplied by r squared. So the first thing is to divide by pi. If you do it that side, do it that side. Then we have a over pi equals r squared. Remember, pi divided by pi is 1, and 1r squared is r squared. Right, so it looks like we got rid of it, but we just transformed it to 1, which is what we want. Right, how do we sort out this squared? Well, if you think about it, right, you need to do the opposite. Because every time we get rid of something, or we always do the opposite. So this was pi multiplied by r squared, so it's multiplying by pi. So the opposite of that is dividing by pi. And if we wanted to get rid of minus a, we'd add a. If we wanted to get rid of plus a, we'd minus a. So how do we get rid of squared? What's the opposite of squared? The opposite of squared is square root. So to cancel out a squared and get rid of that, you need to take the square root of r squared. And that will give you r, which is what we want as the subject. If you square root that side, then you must square root the other side, just like we always do with our balance method solving equations. Whatever you do to the one side, you must do the other side. But I put a big square root over this because it has to contain everything on the left hand side of that formula. So we have big square root of the area divided by pi equals the radius, and then spin it around so it comes first just to look nicer. And there we have the formula to work out the radius of a circle if you know its area. Okay, the square root of the area divided by pi. Alright, so basically to deal with squareds or any other powers, you do the root of them. If it was cubed, you do the cube root. If it was to the power 4, you do the 4th root. If it was to the power 5, you do the 5th root to cancel it out. And you obviously have to do both sides. Okay? Right, let's look at example 3. Last one. quicker video, this one. So example 3, this time we're going to look at a formula with a root in it. So a equals b minus 2 root c. Completely made up just to illustrate the question. Now I want the subject this time to be c. So I'll put that in brackets over there to indicate which one I'm looking to make the subject. At the moment a is the subject, it's on its own on the left hand side, but I want c on its own on the left hand side. How do we do that? Well, I need to get rid of this b and this minus 2 times this square root of c. So I got to get rid of b, the multiplying by minus 2 and the root. We get rid of the b first. Anything on their own, numbers on their own, remember we do the adding, subtracting first if we can. Take away b that side, take away b that side. A minus b is a minus b. That's gone. That leaves behind minus 2 times the square root of c, remember. That minus is part of this 2, so do not forget to write it. It's like chopping his arm off. Okay? So now we need to get rid of this minus 2. Now it's multiplying by the square root of c, so to get rid of multiplying by minus 2, we divide by minus 2. We divide by exactly the same thing because we turn it into 1. And minus 2 divided by minus 2 is 1, and 1 root c is root c. Okay? And we mustn't forget to divide this side by minus 2 to keep it balanced. So we have a minus b all over minus 2 equals the square root of c. Okay? Remember, I'm always keeping my equal signs in a line. I haven't said about that in this video, I'm just reminding you, keep it all tidy. And that's communicating your maths nice and clearly for everyone to see. So all we got to get rid of now is the square root. Well, if you think about it, I said in the last example, what's the opposite of squaring? And I said square root. So what's the opposite of square root? Squaring. Okay, so to get rid of this square root, you put a couple of brackets and square the lot. And that will cancel out that square root. Okay, it's basically saying the square root of c times the square root of c. Well, that'll give you c. Okay, and if we square all of that, we need to put big brackets around all of that and square that too, because you've got to do the same thing both sides. So here we go. I'm going to write that again as neatly as I can, and that gives me c. And now it's on its own, and all I need to do is spin it around, and there we have our formula where c is now the subject. Okay, so that's how you deal with a square root. If it was a cube root, then I would cube both sides. I put a little 3 there and a 3 there if that was a cube root. Okay, well that's it, just those 3 examples. Just a very quick recap. So the opposite of square root is squaring, the opposite of squaring is square root, and same goes with cube root and cubing. Okay, they're opposites. And when you have a bracket, you have 2 ways of sorting it out. You can either deal with the term outside the bracket by dividing by that first to get rid of it, and then the brackets disappear because there's nothing outside to multiply by them, and then you can carry on until you got your b as the subject in this one. Or you can expand the brackets first and then do your balancing to get the letter on its own that you want as the subject. Okay? Hope that helps. Bye for now.